Welcome, and thanks for listening to this week's episode of
The Milk Production.
The Milk Production.
Welcome to the Milk Production. I'm happy to be here. My name is Russ Rakestraw, co-host of the show. More minor role than Her Highness over here. Happy to be here. I am a full-time dad and a part-time technology guy.
Good. I like it. And most of all, I'm just excited that you're back because the last time we released an episode, I was solo.
I was in Idaho.
You were in Idaho.
Where the time zones and the latitudes do weird things.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at my hotel room at 10:08 p.m. and still seeing the sun in the sky was odd.
Well, you know, I could relate that day because I went to bed when the sun was still up here as well. It was only 8:30, but
it wasn't 10:08 p.m.
It wasn't 10:08 p.m., but
Yeah.
the sun was still up when I went to bed. So, yeah, that's super weird, though. I don't know. I haven't been anywhere like that, like Alaska or anywhere else like that.
Alaska,
where
I
the
mean,
sun
it's like all day.
Yeah.
I'm all night
Yeah.
right now, I think.
And where do doesn't it do that in some of the
Scandinavian
yeah.
countries,
Yeah. How did you know that's what I was talking about with my finger doing this?
I don't.
These are the four over there that
yeah,
I'm pointing
I
to.
don't know. It's ESP, I guess.
Cool. We'll have to go there. I'm Meaghan Selke. I am the co-host here on the show as well. Lactation by trade, mother by passion, and lover of reading, sharing information, and learning, I guess. Overall, just learning.
What's that scripted?
No, it was not scripted.
Lactation by trade, mother by passion. Wow.
It came from the heart.
That's good. That's good. I like that. That's got to be your tagline.
The only thing I script is what we definitely have to hit in the episode. You know, so when you see me looking at show notes, that's
show notes.
That's my show notes.
You notice I don't have show notes.
Yeah.
My role in this whole equation is to convey no useful information.
No, you ask great questions.
That does not convey any
Yes, it does. It prods me to say, hey, tell them more about this.
It gets you to convey useful
Whatever.
information. My role is not to convey this.
Otherwise, I would forget much of the stuff. So yesterday, one of the pediatricians was talking to me about Trash the Pump and Dump, which is an episode I have recorded while you were gone, which we have not released yet, which maybe by the time this is published, that will be released. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure about the order of these things. Either way, it's a resource review that I did by myself, another Tata Teachings. And we were talking about Trash the Pump and Dump, and I said, that's so funny. I just did a resource review on this for my podcast. And she was like, you have a podcast? That's amazing. And I was like, yeah, I love it. It's with my husband. And she was like, how does your husband fit into a breastfeeding podcast?
He doesn't.
No, I told her, I said, I think it's important to include the partner in the conversation. And I think I do. And I think you do a really good job of being a supportive person. And I want that to be comfortable and normal for other partners. You know, this is something that like becomes a part of your life for years. So you have to, you can either dig in or like look away, you know, I mean, those are kind of your two choices.
I'm all for digging in.
Yeah, that's why you're here. It's important.
Dig. Let's get the shovels.
Okay. So you wanna kind of just jump right in?
Let's go.
All right. So
What are we going to talk about today?
well, I'm glad you asked. So talking about, how this becomes such a part of your life for while you're breastfeeding or pumping or whatever you're doing. I crunched some numbers. I did some nerd things. And so just a quick data point. I pulled this from the Cleveland Clinic. First, they say that your first labor can last anywhere between 12 and 24 hours, labor and delivery. Subsequent children, maybe 8 and 10 hours, maybe less.
Okay.
Just to kind of give you context of the amount of time. Now, because nobody ever questions the value of childbirth education. It's like, okay, yeah, it's coming from where? Like, how is that going to happen?
Watermelon through lemon?
Yeah. I don't understand how any of this happens. Like, please, somebody explain it to me. But in reality, I think a lot of times breastfeeding is a bit like that too. And people end up on the other side of pregnancy with a baby that, whose life you have to sustain now. And you want to feel prepared to do that. So when I used to work in the hospital and moms had done prenatal breastfeeding education, it was so different, the conversations that we would have. So I know the latch is supposed to look like this, and, I can hear these swallows, and so I think everything's going well, but, those types of conversations. Whereas a mom who has never done this before is like, I've walked into rooms where the mom's like, I think he's breastfeeding, and the baby's mouth is not even open, just sitting there at the nipple, smushed against the mouth, the nipple. Mouth smushed against the nipple, not open, not latched, not sucking, nothing. And so, I know those two are extremes, but, I can tell you personally, I didn't feel prepared for my first. So I think this is a really undervalued, pretty critical piece of education to do in the prenatal period. And that's just, what can lactation journeys look like? So today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about 10 reasons you may want to schedule a prenatal lactation consult. Those 10 reasons, and we'll dive into each of them, so don't start asking your questions yet, like I know you do. Those 10 reasons are going to be general breastfeeding education, what a feed is supposed to look, feel, and sound like, nipple anatomy, medical history, personal history.
Mental note, don't make creepy noises whenever nipples are mentioned. Nipple anatomy.
You really enjoy that way too much.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
You're like, don't ask any
interrupt
questions.
me,
We need to get through these. And I'm like, here, let me interrupt.
Okay, in case I need it, I'm going to go take it from the top.
Okay,
just
take
in
it
case I
from
can.
nipple anatomy.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we're going to hit general breastfeeding education. What a feed is supposed to look, feel, and sound like. Nipple anatomy. Medical history.
Yep.
Personal history.
Sounds good.
How-tos and demonstrations.
Perfect.
So like hands-on things. Getting acquainted with your pump. Jobs for your partner or other support person. Nipple care and feeding issues. And when I say we're going to hit those things today, those are the reasons we're going to talk about why you need a prenatal consult. We don't have enough time on
We
this
could do a show on each one of those.
We could do a show on
nipple anatomy.
I don't know if we could do a single show on all of these. There's so much information here. And that's
You're saying
why,
each one could be its own show.
oh my gosh, you're going to
Could
see
be multiple
You're
shows.
going to see all the things that I'm going into, the little subtopics for each of them, and realize that like there's a lot of content here. So
Okay.
so not all of these apply to everyone.
Okay.
Right? So we'll deeper dive into these things and talk about, things you should be considering or thinking about as to whether you need a prenatal consult. And you'll quickly see that one person may not have all of these issues. Like maybe nipple anatomy is not an issue at all. Or maybe this mom has had a baby before and baby never did latch. And what was that issue? And she became an exclusive pumper, or she couldn't even pump. She wasn't getting, so everybody's situation is going to be particularly unique. So it's not as if, you go and schedule a prenatal consult and you have to hit all of these things. There's no way. You couldn't do it in a single appointment. But the things that jump out to you, the things that you're not sure of, some people have general breastfeeding education, right? Some people know why it's important and all that kind of stuff. But they want to get a hands-on demonstration about how to do hand expression, or they wonder if their nipples are a normal shape. Like, I had no idea. I can't say this anymore because I've seen a lot of nipples now. But at the point when I had my first baby, I had no idea whether my nipples were like that. There could even be a thing about like shorter, longer, wider, smaller, whatever. I had no idea. So I wouldn't have known nipple shape could be a factor in latching at all whatsoever. So talking about those things ahead of time, meeting with someone and saying, hey, are these cool? Like, are my nipples good? Are we foreseeing an issue here?
Have you ever been like, no, your nipples are terrible?
No, I've never said that. But I will tell you, I've had moms who, I'm not in a prenatal consult, unfortunately, but I think moms, we're deeper diving here, but inverted nipples, that is when I would say absolutely go talk to a lactation
What
consultant.
does that look like? I'm going to have to look that up on the internet.
You can look it up on the internet, but it's basically just, it's like kind of, it goes inward a little bit, and the skin sometimes is attached. So if baby is latched, if that skin is attached, it's coming apart each time. That can be very painful.
That sounds very painful.
Now, sometimes it's not attached, and it comes out, and it's completely fine and comfortable. But sometimes...
Like the lights on a Corvette.
I guess.
That, you know, they pop up when you need them.
Yeah, but this is... So where my fingers are connecting is the front of the nipple.
We might remove that reference. Go ahead.
So if this is your standard nipple, right? An inverted nipple is going to be folded in on itself a little bit.
Yep.
And so again, if it's attached here, that can be painful. Anyway, we've gone deeper on that.
Sorry, I'm not supposed to do
that's
that.
okay. No, that's okay. Now we're getting to the part where,
Okay.
you know, keep the questions coming. So just for the topic of general breastfeeding education, what are some things you might not know you don't know, right? A lot of us know why breast milk is the best choice for the health of the baby, but maybe you want more specifics. Maybe, you know, you're really considering, I don't know, my grandma formula fed all her babies. My mom formula fed me. Why would breast milk be better? But you're curious about it. Schedule that prenatal lactation consult and they can give you some information on it.
Maybe you really like parsley.
Maybe you really like parsley and sage, and you're contemplating whether you can give that up.
Sage, rosemary, and thyme.
Thank you.
Thyme's okay.
Time's okay.
You're okay with thyme.
And isn't rosemary okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just parsley and
Yeah.
sage.
Now it's going to be big rosemary coming out here.
Here comes big rosemary. Don't you? McCormick. Lawsuit from McCormick soon. Here it comes.
Defamation of their...
Defamation of rosemary.
Okay, we have to get somewhere. Okay, so under that category of general breastfeeding education, some other things you might hit. How is breastfeeding healthy for the lactating parent? The more you breastfeed, the lower your risk of breast cancer. We're not going to deep dive onto that. We can obviously, that's a whole subject we
Is there
could go
a
into.
hormone thing too, like an oxytocin release or something?
Yeah.
So it makes you it's kind of like a happy pill when you need,
Yeah.
because you're like risking postpartum depression, right? Like you need all the oxytocin you can get, right?
Oh, everybody likes oxytocin, yeah.
Give me some oxytocin.
Yeah, so benefits to the parent. And I think that those things are important to point out. What to expect right after birth. So what's the golden hour? Why is it important to breastfeed in the golden hour? Have you missed a magic window if you don't breastfeed in the golden hour? Why skin to skin is important. I'll give you a quick example on that. So I walked into a room in the hospital one time and it was, over 24 hours. And mom was like, I'm having a hard, whatever the difficulty was with latching. And I said, waking baby up. That's what it was. And I said, why don't you put baby skin to skin? She's like, oh, we did that. She thought you do skin to skin right after birth and that's it. And actually there's a whole benefit to doing skin to skin for weeks, months after birth. So that's something you could talk about. Understanding what baby's signs of hunger are going to be. And conversely, what their signs of satiety are going to be. So hunger cues, signs of satiety, things that will help you know what's going on.
Here's a sign of satiety.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Open hands, relaxed arms, just sawing logs. Yeah. Yeah. How many pees and poops to expect? There's a whole recommendation of what we should be seeing in terms of pees and poops. Poops are a little bit more variable, but pees, definitely a very good indication of hydration.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons, right? All of that general breastfeeding education. Second reason, what a feed is supposed to look, feel, and sound like. So, latch. How does the latch look, right? Are we coming from the right angle? Is the mouth open, lips flanged? All this stuff that I cannot simply deep dive into right now in this conversation, but there's a lot of good recommendations about how to get a good, deep, asymmetric latch. Something you should, be aware of. It's different when you have the baby. You put that baby to the breast, you still might feel a little bit awkward, but if having that education is going to be really helpful, it's going to get you a little further along than you would be without it. Positioning. So the latch is different than positioning, but baby's body positioning is incredibly important especially in the first few days, weeks, months. As they get older, when Jackson was like 11 months old, he would be playing golf and then come over and like stand up nurse and then run away. So they get much more capable, but in those early days, the positioning is so important. So important.
By the way, we say playing golf.
He loves golf.
He loves golf. He's 2 years old and he loves golf. So I know that myth. You just threw that in there. It sounds a little weird. Oh, my 11-month-old was, playing around and, we were out on the course and he just got done putting the 13th and came over and.
He likes golf. What can I say?
Can I ask a quick question? Not to interrupt everything,
Mm-hmm.
but if I'm a new mom and I'm listening to this, I'm like, oh my God, you're talking about how much material there is and all this stuff. Like, what kind of commitment am I looking at? Like, do I have to go to a class every day for 3 months?
Great question.
Or like, what kind of commitment am I looking at to get enough up to speed that you feel like the mom is comfortable?
Great question. Every bit of education helps, is the best thing I can say. However, there are many different formats. So you can do, your insurance should cover your prenatal consult with a lactation consultant. However, that would typically be like an hour and a half session.
Yeah.
And so that may not be enough.
1.5 hour session.
1.5 hour session. And that may not be enough. So, there are other opportunities out there to do like couples courses where maybe you do 3 sessions and you pay a rate for both of you to be participating in it, and you agree with the lactation consultant on the rate and the frequency and whatever else. Right. There are other group sessions. I do one through the pediatric office that I'm at, and some are free. You can do some through the hospital. Sometimes the hospital ones will be a succinct 2-hour one, or 6 sessions over 6 weeks. Maybe a 2-hour session each week. You could really spend a lot of time preparing, for it. And honestly, the biggest recommendation that I would make is first have that consult with a lactation consultant for the hour and a half and just try to get as much information as you can and see how you feel.
Yeah.
And if you feel still very underprepared, then try to find additional ways to meet with someone to have information. But really, it's about addressing your specific things. Some of this stuff you can find great resources on Instagram. You can find crappy resources on Instagram too, but you can find great resources on Instagram that give you little tidbit videos of what a good latch is supposed to look like or whatever. So if you feel fairly confident in some of those areas, but you just want to get your nipples looked at to make sure that, bifurcated nipple, can you still breastfeed with that? Yes, you absolutely can. Or it's like got like kind of a
ridge.
It has basically 2 ridges, right? So it's like 2 sides. It's almost this like 2 sides of a nipple, or like there's a valley that runs through it. Yeah. So there's all kinds of stuff like that. An additional nipple. What's going to happen to that? Is milk going to come out? Yeah.
Does milk come out?
It depends. How
you could have milk coming out of 3 nipples.
It depends. Not usually.
But can happen.
I imagine it could. I've never seen it.
6th?
Okay, now we've got too far off the rails here.
They've got the whole 2 rows.
I've never seen that. I've only ever seen
dogs.
1 extra. I don't think that happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
It does with dogs. 100% does. Don't you try to refute that. I can do a quick internet search and show you there are dogs with many more than 2 or 3 nipples.
Okay, but back to humans.
The expert over here.
Back to humans. Okay, so we were talking. So in the answer to your question, there's so many different ways you can do that, and it really is an individual choice. But I would recommend 1 prenatal lactation consult, usually an hour to an hour and a half in length. Do it with your support person. and see what you need after that.
I think that's the problem with being underprepared. We can move that beyond the realm of lactation. If you're underprepared, a lot of times you don't know that you're underprepared.
Exactly.
Until it's too late.
Exactly.
So that, a brief introduction can kind of make you feel like I'm prepared, or
Yes.
I need to do some more work.
Yes. And your insurance should cover that. Your insurance should cover that.
Should being average.
By law.
Oh.
Yeah. By law, they should cover it. Now, there are grandfathered programs that don't cover it, so there are nuanced circumstances, but it should be covered. So that's what I would recommend in answer to your question. So again, talking about that, what is the feed supposed to look and feel like, latch positioning, active sucking versus just hanging out, non-nutritive suck. Both of those are fine. You can have the baby latched on and not sucking, and it's totally fine. But you've got to have periods of active sucking to ensure baby's transferring milk. So knowing what that looks like. And time. One of the most common questions I would get in the hospital is, how long is this supposed to last? And the answer is that it's variable, and you can go into many different reasons why. But, giving you just more data about what you should be seeing, seeing, and hearing in those postpartum days. Okay, so that was what a feed's supposed to look, feel, and sound like. Another reason you might want an appointment is because of the
Nipple anatomy.
Nipple anatomy.
Yeah.
Nipples can be short, medium, long, wide, small, narrow, bifurcated, inverted. They can be everted, but invert upon compressing your breast forward.
How about curly?
I've never seen a curly nipple.
I'm thinking of
But
fries.
hey, if you have it, definitely meet with a lactation
Crinkle
consultant.
cut? Could they be crinkle cut?
What's wrong with you?
Just wondering.
Are you hungry? Okay, so nipple anatomy. And I think, this is a great area where OBs could have a little more conversation. They are doing...
Obstetricians.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said obese.
No, OBs. OBGYNs.
Yes.
They're doing breast exams during pregnancy. And I think there's a real opportunity there to say, hey,
You've got an inverted nipple.
that nipple might cause you a little difficulty when you're breastfeeding.
Are usually both the same? Like if I have one bifurcated, do I have
Wonderful
two bifurcated?
question. And not usually. In fact, even for what you might think of as like, oh, these are pretty, this nipple anatomy is pretty good. You're going to be just fine. One might be a little bit shorter than the other, and it might be a little bit more difficult for baby to latch onto than the other side.
Therefore, baby will prefer
One side or
the
another.
easy side.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's always a preference, right?
Sometimes,
Remember,
yeah.
they're sisters, not twins.
They're sisters, not twins. That's right. Good job. Varsity versus JV, the whole deal. Yeah. So, understanding your individual nipple anatomy and what type, there are interventions for that, right? Like what types of things you could do, whether it's positional or something, if you have particularly flat nipples and you end up needing to use a nipple shield, understanding how to use that, understanding.
Still don't get how those work. I have to look that one up on the
We could
internet,
do a
too.
whole.
I've seen them around the house, obviously.
Why don't
'cause
we
my
just
wife
do-
is a lactation consultant.
Why don't we'll do an episode on nipple shields.
Okay.
And then, your nipple shield curiosity will be sated.
They're like silver and they look like spaceships.
Oh, you're talking about the silverettes.
Well, that's a nipple shield, isn't it?
No.
What is that thing?
See,
It looked like a shield. It's metal. And
it does look like a shield. Those are
it's not a shield. Thank God.
the shields are the silver ones. There's one right there.
Silver one. That's what
I'm
I
sorry,
just
the
said.
clear ones.
What, where?
You don't see that transparent?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But we digress. So
Incredibly.
So medical history. I think this is really important. And again, an area for your GPs, your OBs, your specialists that you're seeing once they know you're pregnant, for an opportunity for them to say, hey, you should meet with a lactation consultant. That's not happening. So trying to spread the word as much as possible, not happening commonly. So trying to spread the word as much as possible about different things in your medical history that might need to be discussed with a lactation consultant.
If you had like a lumpectomy or something, right?
Excellent example. A lumpectomy, a breast reduction, a breast implant
Augmentation.
Let's see. PCOS. So PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, it's very much like a hormonal thing, and those hormones can, and it's a coin toss, so these things that we talk about here, I'm bringing them up because they warrant a conversation with a lactation consultant in terms of preparing.
Yeah.
It does not mean you can't breastfeed.
Right.
It might affect your supply. And that's why it's something that you want to talk about, how to best mitigate that, how to see the signs of whether it's affecting your supply, how to know, okay, I put everything at it and this is the supply I'm going to get. A lot of this is like educating yourself so that you can then shape your breastfeeding experience to be the way that you want it to as much as possible. Right? So these things that we talk about.
Is there any connection between supply and the ultimate size of the baby? In other words, like a 6-month appointment, this baby's at 99%. On average, you're much more likely to have a 99 percentile baby if your supply is
very good
high.
Question. It's also very hard to know.
Okay.
Because if we're strictly breastfeeding, exclusively breastfeeding, we don't know what baby's transferring at each feed. And we also don't know what's still in the tank, so to speak, that baby didn't eat. So it's very hard to quantify mom's supply if baby's strictly breastfeeding or primarily breastfeeding. When you have an oversupply, we do know that sometimes babies only are getting that carb-rich milk and they are not gaining weight as well because they're not getting to the fattier part of the milk. So sometimes we see that. Now, if you have a really robust supply, you're not having oversupply symptoms in baby, like no green stools, gaining weight well, all that kind of stuff. You could just have a big eater. Like you have a great supply, maybe more than average, but baby's like a chonker. He just wants to eat all the time. Just that it's highly variable, and I think there maybe are too many variables to really test it that well. But that's a good question.
Would be a good research.
Yeah,
Figure out a way to measure it.
Yeah, if you could figure out a way to measure capacity of the breast and refill rate, there are lots of things to explore.
It begs the question, is there any relationship between, in general, I understand everybody's specific, is there any relationship between breast size and supply? Excellent
question, and no.
No. So small boobs could have big supply, big boobs could have low supply.
Yes, and when you're talking about the more extremes, like really large breasts, do we have a potential for greater capacity? Yes, right? I mean, just a potential for it, but that doesn't mean they're going to get an oversupply or a great supply even. When we have really small boobs, does that mean they have and I'm just talking about not a particular size, just like on the spectrum. If you're on the really small side, there's only so much capacity you can have in that compared to the larger breast, but the refill rate could make it so that mom had a really robust supply regardless of whether she had small breasts.
Okay.
So lots of factors. Great question. And, I guess, in the nipple anatomy, maybe breast anatomy, that fits as part of that kind of conversation of like, are my boobs big enough? And are you seeing those breasts change during pregnancy, right? So that kind of falls into the medical history category here, but are they changing shape? Are they getting bigger? Have you had any concerns, or has anyone mentioned to you at any point that you don't have enough, like insufficient glandular tissue? So maybe underdeveloped on the underside of your breast or something like that. When that happens, sometimes that can affect your supply. Again, not a reason why you just can't breastfeed. It's just something that you've got to talk about and have that conversation. IVF pregnancies can impact your supply. What from it is, again, not a showstopper. And when you use your own egg, from what I understand, those hormones and the milk supply come easier than when you're not, when you have a donor egg. However, it's, again, just something to be aware of. And sometimes moms who have a donor egg end up breastfeeding with a great supply with no issues. So it's not so cut and dry. If you're a mom of more than one baby and you have a history of clogged ducts, mastitis, something like that. That's good to be aware of so that you can try to prevent that from occurring. Sometimes what happened there is maybe too much stimulation. So I was breastfeeding my baby and pumping and breastfeeding and pumping and breastfeeding and pumping, and I developed this oversupply. And then I stopped pumping because I realized I didn't need to, and I got these clogged eggs. Okay, so what are we going to do this time around to make it so that you don't get that? What kind of things can we do to help? Obesity can impact supply. Diabetes can impact
That's why I have such
breastfeeding.
low milk supply.
Stop it. Don't talk about my husband like that. HIV status. If you are HIV positive, there are situations where you can continue breastfeed your baby. And that's a very, nuanced situation. So definitely something you would want to talk with a lactation consultant about. Like we talked about, a history of any sort of breast surgery, lumpectomy, augmentation, reduction, all that good stuff. If you're pregnant with multiples, what do I do with my hands? Right? I mean, literally, what do I do with my hands? I've got two babies.
I have twin brothers. My mom did the football hole.
Yeah, with both of them. Now, that is sort of the ideal that we have in our head of what we get to. But she probably didn't start like that. And they were NICU babies too.
They were.
So a lot of times how you start is in the early days, you breastfeed one at a time. And you learn what's enough for this baby and what's enough for this baby. And then you bring them together. And you can do the football hold. You can actually do the cradle hold where their bodies kind of go over each other. There's a lot of options there. So you want to figure out what works for you. Some moms are like, I'm only ever feeding one baby at a feed. The other one's getting a bottle. So again, really tapping into what you want, talking to a lactation consultant about your options and coming up with a plan that works for you will help you be better prepared in those moments, days, weeks after delivery. Beta blockers can impact your supply. Any medication you're on worth talking with a lactation consultant about. If you are inducing lactation, say you're not the birthing parent, but you want to be inducing lactation to feed the baby, or you're adopting a baby and you want to induce lactation, this one is so important to me. Differently abled. So I had a mom who couldn't hear well. I mean, she was legally deaf. And the doctor told her not to breastfeed her baby. Just pump and give bottles. And
What was the justification there?
because she wouldn't hear it was because she wouldn't hear the cues of what baby needs, which is just wrong. And
Even if you couldn't hear those cues, you wouldn't hear them for bottle feeding either. I don't
Right.
understand the logic there.
I think the theory is, and like with, some of the type A personalities, it's, exactly how much is going in the baby and you know exactly when, and you get on a schedule.
Yeah.
So you're going to feed it every 3 hours. You're going to feed a baby.
But isn't a lot of it by feel?
Yes.
Anyway. At
Yeah.
some point?
Yeah. And visual, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she can still see whether the baby's in distress, that kind of thing. But if she's sleeping, the baby's waking up and crying. And so well-intended, terrible advice.
Yeah.
It was absolutely an option for her to breastfeed. And there are tools available for that community to say, hey, your baby's crying. And I think there's like a light and maybe like some things that vibrate. There's always, a unique situation. If you're in a unique situation, a way to sort of customize a plan for you if that's your desire. And even in the face of medical advice you don't necessarily agree with, or you're wondering whether it's really accurate. Separate from medical history, so going into the fifth reason why you might consider getting a prenatal lactation consult, personal history. So again, generational differences between families. That is, generational recommendations play such a big part in what we decide to do with our children.
Right.
No, we change. We definitely change over time, and it's absolutely possible to do something different. But especially if you have a closeness with your family, what your parents did, what your grandparents did, and what they're telling you to do plays a role.
There seems to be a generation, I could probably call them the boomers, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong here, because this is I'm just conveying my perception, not any data. But there was a generation where kind of breastfeeding was seen as something you didn't do.
Yeah.
That most people didn't do. Mm-hmm. Isn't that true?
There
during
was
the
some
boomer
miseducation
generation?
that formula is better than breast milk, and
Or that you'll be disfigured after breastfeeding.
yeah,
things like that.
there was all sorts of bad information out there about it.
And that kind of persisted in the I would say 50s to 70s.
I think so. And I mean, to some degree, even after that, because again, it's coming away from that information.
But the point is, the generational thing is your mom says, I didn't breastfeed and you turned out great. Mm-hmm. Right. And here's what we were told by doctors.
Yep.
And now I'm passing on antiquated, inaccurate information
based on anecdotes, right?
Yeah.
Personal experience.
Right.
So I think that's a really important thing. It's also great to bring, if you're going to have your mom in the house or dad in the house and you want them to be educated on some general breastfeeding education, great to have them a part. I mean, there's support people. They can be a part of your prenatal lactation consult and listen and hear what they have to say and why this is beneficial. And that education can sometimes help the family around the corner and oh, I didn't realize all these great things. And now they're on the same page and able to better support this lactating parent and move through that postpartum period a little smoother. So it was very important. Trauma, in that personal history category, trauma of any kind, mental, physical, whatever, those types of things can come up, whether it's related to the breast, the body, or the mind. Those things can come up when you're breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. Talking through whether that's something that you want to do, alternatives, or even if you decide this is really not something that I want to do because of this trauma, I need to know how to comfortably wean because I know my milk is going to come in anyway. That's another reason to meet with a lactation consultant, because your milk will come in anyway. And so how do you comfortably not produce milk in that you will produce a little bit, but how do you just suppress that as much as possible in situations where you're really sure that's not something that you want to do? Okay. And so separately, personal history, you're a second time, third time parent, whatever the case may be, and your previous experiences have gone terribly. I should have had a prenatal consult for Everin after my experience with Aiden Khan, because exclusive pumping stressed me out so significantly, and I knew I did not want to return to that place. Instead, I was in pain for 6 weeks and then finally saw a lactation consultant with Everin that fixed everything, and it was great. Don't be like me.
Your journey began.
Yeah. Don't be like me. Get the education ahead of time.
Well, can we talk about something that isn't on your list real quick about that? And I think, because my job requires the building of trust and establishing of relationships, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm, asking a government agency to send me a couple $1 million, they want to know that they can trust me. Mm-hmm. And there are good salespeople and there are bad salespeople, right? And by good and bad, I mean there are those that have morals and ethics and those that don't. Mm-hmm. And so there are bad lactation consultants. I've experienced them. That when I had my first, I had a lot of parents tell me, watch out for the lactation Nazis in the hospital. And they'll come in and they'll scream at you. And we had that with our first, with my ex-wife and I, we had that with our first. She came in and she's like, this baby's not is risking failure to thrive, and it's not latching correctly. And instead of inspiring us, just kind of tried to motivate us by fear. Yeah. So the point is, if I have that prenatal education, I can kind of figure out, do I like this person who's training me, who's giving me this information? Do I trust them? And having someone that you trust, a resource that you can trust, or being able, because if I'm doing the classes ahead of time, I can say, I don't like Meaghan.
Yes. Yeah.
Meaghan and I don't connect. I need to go find a different lactation
someone I
consultant.
Can connect with. Yes.
Yeah. So the establishment of that trust and that relationship probably it could be an important
very important
to start.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of first-time parents are in that place where it's like, oh, geez, this person said I was doing it all wrong, so I'm doing it all wrong. Yeah. I remember the moment with Aiden Khan where I realized this is just everybody's opinion.
All this is.
This is just everybody's opinion.
Not a whole lot of fact floating around.
No, this is everybody's opinion, and they are different, and that's okay. But it's actually my job to decide what I'm going to take from everybody. He was 3 weeks old. Yeah. It took me 3 weeks for me to realize that. Yeah. So yes, you're absolutely right, and it is important.
I mean, some of that opinion can be based in research, and can be a very informed opinion,
educated opinion. Yeah, yes, like it's not as if a pediatrician who's making a recommendation isn't making it from a place of education.
Right.
It's just that there's a lot to consider.
Yeah. And
you ultimately have the choice about what you want to do with your child.
Right.
So great point. And definitely, fits nicely under the personal history category. So number 6 on our list of reasons you might want to get a prenatal lactation consult. How-tos and demonstrations. Hand expression and something we've already talked about, antenatal colostrum harvesting. You definitely want a how-to.
Sounds like something out of the Matrix.
Here we go.
We must harvest their colostrum.
To maintain the species.
To keep the machine alive. Harvest the colostrum.
Very good. It's a very sci-fi movie.
Harvesting anything related to the body. It just sounds scary to people, I think.
Yeah.
We must harvest their
Okay, let's change it to this. Antenatal colostrum collection.
There we go.
You like that better?
Okay. I ain't no crop. Don't call me no crop.
Okay.
You can't pick my corn.
Okay. I won't call you a crop anymore.
Well, there's no colostrum here. Go harvest elsewhere. You ain't getting no colostrum here.
Okay. Okay, so that's one. And I think it's really important. How-to demonstrations, hands-on. Hand expression is kind of weird. It's just kind of weird. And knowing what to do when someone's like, have you been able to hand express any? And you're like, I haven't even tried. How would I don't know. Having a little demonstration ahead of time and knowing how to do it's very helpful. Even if you don't decide to harvest your own colostrum.
Collect.
Number 7, getting acquainted with your pump. I didn't put this
pump.
one.
What are you doing today, Pump?
I didn't want to put this one too high on the list because
your hopes and dreams, Pump.
No, it's more like, what are my hopes and dreams with this pump?
Here, Pump. Here are my hopes and dreams. That's how you get acquainted.
Okay. So a couple important things here. Flange size, really important. Flange is the piece that goes right on your nipple. There's a specific way it should fit. You don't want it to be too big. You don't want it to be too small. It's like Goldilocks. You want it to be just right.
Kind of need a professional to look at that.
You do. And now you can measure it yourself, but you want to understand, sometimes the elasticity of the nipple is different. And then beyond flange size, okay, so you get your flange size down. How do you use your pump? How do you put it together? You get it, and you're like, wow, there's a lot more pieces than I thought it was going to be. Put it together, turn it on, see what the different phases are. How, what's a normal pumping session look like? When should I start pumping? Why would I start pumping before 4 to 6 weeks? Those types of things. So
here are the phases of pumps. Here's phase 1. Here's phase 2. There. Don't even have to do it anymore. We're acquainted.
You know what?
We are hello pump. We're
I don't even need to do any pumping podcasts. You just did Pumping 101.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you're funny. Okay, reason number 8: jobs for the supporting partner and or other family members that are going to be supporting moms or lactating parents postpartum.
Make food.
We've obviously talked about this in the past. Yes, top of the list, feeding the nursing parent. And so what does that mean? what does the nursing parent's diet need to look like? 500 extra calories a day beyond your pre-pregnancy diet.
Got it. Just a little bit more butter in the dish.
Yeah. Butter, lactation cookies, snacks strategically placed around the house, water,
Like
those types of
Easter egg
things.
hunts.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a snickerdoodle.
How'd that get there?
Oh, I have that snickerdoodle. Well, I guess I'll eat it because I'm lactated.
Yeah, obviously you need to talk to someone about this. Don't take this advice. This is just jokes. Okay, other infant care.
There's no joke about snickerdoodles.
Well, I like a snickerdoodle. Yeah, I do.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry. Serious business.
Yeah, this is serious.
Go ahead.
So under jobs for the support person, other infant care besides feeding. So a lot of times, you'll hear the mom express, well, the dad wants to be able to feed, or the other person wants to let me sleep at night. Whatever the case may be, that's fine if that's what you want, if that's ultimately what you want to do. Here's some reasons you may not want to do that for your supply, for establishing your supply, for making sure breastfeeding is comfortable and improving, et cetera, et cetera. And here are some other ways that support person can help you, because that list is still long. Change the diaper before baby goes to the breast. Don't be the one to get out of bed and get the baby from the bassinet when they're crying and it's time to feed. Set the alarm and turn the alarm off and get up and get the baby. Change the baby afterward if they poop in the middle of the feed. Put them back to sleep. Just an endless number of things, which obviously...
And to me, all that combined could be considered the hard part.
Oh, yeah.
Of feeding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if you get feeding well established, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm waking up, I'm feeding the baby, and then I'm going back to sleep.
Right.
But
then you're at risk entering that big debate. Like, you're not working. I got to go to work tomorrow morning.
You do.
Being a lactating mom and doing all the things you're doing with the newborn isn't work.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a whole other... And I think it's good for the support person to be a part of these consults so that there's education from an outsider. It's education from an outsider saying, this is really time intensive for this lactating parent. Like, yes, you are returning to work. That does not take away from the time intensive aspect of what's going on and how this is above and beyond just going to work in the morning. So great point there. They can be the person who tracks the pees and poops and the feeds and the amount of time of the feeds.
Data collection is my most fun thing to do.
Finding a great app. Washing pump parts.
I did a lot of that.
If you're bottle feeding, preparing the bottles, and just in general, that education about how to support a lactating parent.
And let me ask you.
Yeah.
So you have this hour and a half covered by insurance. Is the spouse allowed to be there, or does that change
100%.
any aspect of that? Okay, cool. So you can just tag along.
Yes, absolutely. And I recommend it.
And
I
at
think
least
that's the best way to
act
do
like
it.
You're paying attention.
Yeah.
Like, just do this.
Take some notes.
Yeah.
Oh, I get the dads involved in every consult that they're in, and I'm like, and I'm going to write this, and I'm going to hand this to you, Dad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sneaky.
Yeah. You gotta bring everybody in.
Tricks of the trade.
It is a family affair. Okay, so number 9 on the reasons why you might want a prenatal lactation consult. Nipple care.
Very important to me.
It is. Remember in the beginning when you said mental note, don't say creepy things?
I'm talking about my own personal nipple care. Okay. If I wear a dress shirt without an undershirt, my nipples, ooh.
It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, I'm just talking about my own nipple care. Very important to me.
So you understand.
There's nothing I hate more than an irritated nipple. I mean, seriously, I'm legit. I think I'd rather you shot me in the toe than gave me irritated nipples.
Okay.
Just the toe. No.
Well,
not the useful ones on either end.
Just like a middle toe. Okay.
Yeah.
One of those useless middle
I don't know
toes.
if they're useless, but less useful.
Oh, we diverge. So good things for nipple care, expressed breast milk. So if you're just exclusively breastfeeding, back to the hand expression, getting some couple drops out, that is from a research perspective, like the best way to help heal your nipples if there's any damage. Coconut oil, nipple creams and ointments, those types of things. Silverettes, which we talked about, look like nipple shields, the metal, things. Those types of tools, do you need them ahead of time? What things can you use together? What can you not use together? what's recommended, what's not, etc. Number 10, the final on our list of the reasons why. There you go. Go ahead, be a little louder.
I have friends that got married to that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That was like they're coming back from the aisle song.
Oh, that's cute.
You know, like after they got married.
Yeah. That's cute. Number 10 on the list, feeding issues. And the reason why I bring this up is not because we want to deep dive into what can go wrong. I mean, generally, you just want to say, this is how you do it, and this is how it should work, right? And you don't want to necessarily spend too much time going down all the rabbit holes of things that can go wrong. However, if you've had another baby and they had a tongue tie, or if you've had another baby and they ended up going under the lights because they were jaundiced or whatever, or any other circumstance, you're just maybe you have gestational diabetes and you're concerned about baby's blood sugar and postpartum and those types of things, you might want to know what you're up against, what things could happen, and what you need to do to best protect your supply and best make sure baby's fed. So, things that might be in that category: hypoglycemia of baby, hyperbilirubinemia, jaundice, thermoregulation issues, temperature control, oral anomalies like the tongue ties, those types of things that we're talking about. Other matters that have baby end up in the NICU after delivery. I mean, that list is so long, we're not even going to go into it. But say baby's in the NICU and you're separated, and/or you've seen ahead of time on a scan or something like that, and you know something's going on that's going to end up putting baby in the NICU. Great to be able to know that in advance and know what to do in that situation for feeding. And just in general, what to do if breastfeeding gets interrupted. Mom has an issue postpartum and needs to go into surgery to make sure the bleeding stopped or whatever. Okay, well, how could that impact supply, and what do we need to do? Now, again, do we need to go into that with everyone? Not necessarily. But certainly, if you have any cues ahead of time that those things might come up, definitely worth talking about, because you'd rather know how to navigate that now than have to figure it out postpartum.
For sure.
So that's it. So we covered the 10 reasons why you might want to schedule your prenatal lactation consult as soon as possible if you're pregnant. Those were general breastfeeding education, what a feed is supposed to look, feel, and sound like, nipple anatomy, medical history, personal history, how-tos and demonstrations, the hands-on stuff, getting acquainted with your pump.
Hello, pump.
Jobs for the supporting person, the partner, other family members, nipple care, and feeding issues. So it was a lot. We did not we were not able to kind of deep dive into any of these. They are all deserving of time, but definitely worth a conversation with a prenatal lactation consultant.
Sounds great.
Could work. Okay, so that's it, right?
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Can't wait to see you next week.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, follow, and G.I. Jane. You know who you are. You listened to us last week and you made a comment. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Hey, by the way, when she says like, subscribe, comment, she's talking to you.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
I know you haven't done it yet. Like, subscribe, follow.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.